Hi everyone, it's Thursday. Woo! The sun is back out here. It's gorgeous. And this is the Thursday conversation around naked communication topics and badass living. So I usually hop in here on Thursdays, and I'm trying to get in here more often than not to answer your questions and to give you feedback from my own life and stories and learnings and teachings and coachings and such, all about naked communication. And just for those of you who might be new, naked communication is not just about communication, but about how you live. It's about showing up in real, raw, honest, and authentic ways throughout your life so that you really can create the kind of relationships you want to create with everyone. It's from your mailman to your boss, to your kids, to your parents, to your spouse, whatever, right? And it's a way of living that's about human connection being a primary outcome, a primary goal for how you interact in the world. It's a way of living that's about really being you. So the naked piece is about peeling back the layers of your own patterns and conditioning that keep you stuck and stifled and stagnant. And it's about disrupting that so you can really show up in a powerful way in your life and have the kind of relationships and intimacy and courageous conversations that you're longing to have. That's naked communication, right? It's bigger than just how do I speak, although that's a part of it. How do I listen, although that's a part of it. It's the whole way you live. Do you live naked? Do you live in connection to who you really are? Hi, Jenna. Is it Jenna or Gina? How do you show up with people in your life, right? How do you present yourself to the world? How do you take responsibility for the kind of life you want to live and the kind of relationships you want to have? That is naked communication as a lifestyle, right? So today I want to talk about how do you know when you leave a toxic relationship? And a member of our group, Megan, asked this question. I thought it was a great question. It comes up not infrequently in my work because I tend to believe through experience and training that most relationships can be healed or mended or gotten to at least a peaceful place, a contained, coexistent place. Whether or not you can make every relationship your most intimate, most soul-filling, most supportive, no, I don't think so. I think that you are on your journey and everybody else is on their journey, and they don't always coincide beautifully, right? So if your mom does no personal development work, has never been to done anything, reading, therapist, podcasts, and she's angry and bitter and she's not willing to look at why she feels life doesn't go her way, whatever, I'm just making this up, right? That's your mom. And here you are, and you're like a light, and you are, out there trying to create a different path for yourself and make beautiful relationships that are honest and supportive and say yes when you mean it and no when you mean it. And your mom's like, what are you doing? Right? She may never be your biggest supporter in this area of your life, but it doesn't mean she doesn't love you. So for the most part, I believe you can get to a peaceful coexistence with people. But there are occasions, and this is, I think, what the member of our group was asking around, when do you know if a relationship is toxic enough to separate from it? And the first thing that came to mind, I keep going toxic in quotes, because I believe nothing is toxic to us unless we really let it be. So that's the first thing. If somebody is infiltrating into your heart or your energy or your soul or your spirit or disrupting your life so greatly that it feels toxic and is really painful and disruptive and siphoning and sucking out all of the good mojo in your life, all your good energy and vitality and optimism, that's not healthy for you. That's not healthy for you. And that person may or may not ever change. But whether or not you allow it to be toxic can change. Does that make sense? Okay, if you're reading this later, let me know. Does that make sense for you? So now here's the tricky part, right? Some relationships we can end more easily. If they're friendships, that's a choice. If they're somebody in your family of origin, a brother, a sister, a mother, a father, a step-parent, whatever, if they're in your own created family of spouse or child, it's more complicated. I'm not going to say, well, no, you just close the door and end that toxicity. So I guess the question is this. You have to assess for yourself if something is really toxic, meaning it is causing you so much discomfort and distress and so much exhaustion to be in relationship with this person that it's really impacting your spirit, then you need to decide what to do about it. So first is it really toxic? Identifying if it's impacting you with pain, sorrow, suffering, exhaustion, right? The second thing is, okay, how do I want to respond? So I've had this in my own life, and I chose to respond with an honest conversation, a naked conversation first, which was something like, you know what, I just feel like every time we talk, you often are complaining a lot. Like something is not working in your life all the time, and you always feel overwhelmed, and you always feel exhausted, and you always feel busy. And it's just, I mean, I really care about you, but it's very exhausting and draining to spend time with you because you always see the negative and you're always kind of perpetually cycling through what isn't working. And that just doesn't really work for me. So I'm not sure how we move forward here other than that kind of conversation again and again just doesn't work for me. And if you're really always too busy, then like we don't have to hang out that much. That's fine, you know? And I started with that kind of conversation, and it was intense. I was super nervous. This was years ago. And this person in my life was very taken aback. She, I think, was, pretty surprised to have somebody be that honest with her and her behaviors, and was saddened by it. And honestly, ultimately, it didn't really change, right? But I still felt like I said what I needed to say. Maybe I planted a seed, compassionate seed, of how I would rather her life be, how I wish that her life hadn't been so busy and negative and, that same story on repeat. But ultimately what I chose to do is to sort of pull back, and just to spend less time. I didn't defriend her on Facebook or tell everybody else anything bad and, anything like that. I just chose to pull back. I didn't reach out for time spent. I limited conversation times to say, I only have 10 minutes right now. That's all, So I just started putting some boundaries around it, and eventually it went away for the most part, right? Eventually, with kindness and boundaries, the relationship was no more. And I really don't have hard feelings at all. I feel like it just wasn't a match, and not everybody needs to be in my orbit. So, and not everybody needs to be in your orbit. We get to decide somewhat who's in our world. So, if it's somebody who's in your family, that's a little trickier. But my advice is the same. That you can either choose to have that honest, heartfelt conversation. Yeah, pulling back and creating different energy for that space. Yeah, good. I'm so glad that was helpful. So you can choose to have that conversation or not. I think most of the time I have hard conversations, but I've practiced and trained and studied and cultivated naked communication skills so that I can try to have the conversation first and see if I can create a shift or transformation. So that's usually my initial action, right? Sometimes you've tried that, it doesn't work, or you don't feel ready, or you feel scared, or it just doesn't feel right to you, or you're just done, okay? That's okay too. Then you need to figure out how to create boundaries that are kind and compassionate, because I believe most of us want to be that way. And I think it's most effective. Just the hardcore cold approach doesn't usually work, right? So if it's somebody in your life and it's a hard relationship to actually end, your parents, let's say, then you start putting in boundaries that protect your energy and your heart and your spirit and your soul. So again, shorter conversations, and you just say that. I've talked to many of my clients about that in terms of their parents, adult to adult, parent-child relationships. Sometimes it's a sibling. I've talked about that, where you just say, I love you, but I can only talk for 15 minutes right now. Or they start to go down that path that really triggers you and siphons your energy, and you say, I love you, but I just can't listen to that right now. I'm so sorry. Maybe it would be helpful for you to go talk to somebody else about that. I'm not good at listening to that again, right? You start putting some boundaries in place. You stop them when they start to gossip about other people, and you be like, I'm just not interested in hearing the gossip. You start to put in these boundaries, and what often happens is that they pull back because it's not so fun for them anymore to just blah, 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 right? Or roll all over you with what's crappy in their life. You're not going to be the one they come to anymore as soon as you start putting in those kind boundaries. And I've for sure seen that happen in my life. And I mean, sometimes you do this even in relationships that aren't toxic, right? Like one of my dearest friends, there was something she was struggling with, and I give her a lot of counsel all the time because I love her to death. But this particular thing, I just couldn't handle it. I was annoying to me. I knew I was not the person who could support her the best because I didn't understand this particular area of struggle she was in. And I just said something like that really nicely to her. I just said, I love you so much and I've got your back fully, but I'm not the best person to support you in this area because it's just not something I fully understand. And I think some of your other friends might be better at that. And recently she said to me, oh my God, that was awesome. Thank you. And I'd been worried to tell her that, but she just really thanked me for it recently because that boundary also helped her to see how much she was spiraling and cycling like crazy over this area of her life, and it really wasn't serving her either. And by me simply saying I just am not the person to help you with that, she was like, oh my gosh, right, what am I doing, right? So putting in boundaries is the other thing. So either have the conversation and or put in some limits, structures, containers, boundaries, whatever word resonates with you, around the amount of time you spend with them, what you're willing to listen to. And then that'll help it to dissipate. If it's an abusive relationship, that's a different conversation. That's a therapeutic conversation. If somebody is toxic relationship to you because they are emotionally or physically abusing you, I would advise talking to a therapist and removing yourself from that situation much more abruptly, probably, than these other gentler exit plans, right? The honest conversation to see if you can affect change, the boundary limit setting, so that you can create non-toxicity for yourself. And the last one is if it's really a dangerous or abusive situation, then you need to get out and get counsel to get out as quickly as possible. So I hope that helps. Thank you for being here. I have a few spots left in my Naked Communication Experience group coaching program. It starts Tuesday the 11th when I get back from a weekend at the Hot Springs with some girlfriends. Yeah! Leaving the family for a few days. I'll come back refreshed and we'll start this group coaching experience together, which is going to be awesome. An amazing little intimate group of women, intentionally small, who are going to support each other in really finding their powerful voice and showing up effectively in their lives and in their relationships. And really, learning how to handle conflict, things like this, directly for you though, not generalized. Handle conflict, asking for what you want with more ease, taking what you need with less guilt, showing up powerfully in hard conversations and managing them more gracefully, and really just cultivating more meaningful and honest and true relationships with everyone in your life and yourself. So if that's something that's interesting to you, let me know. And I'll see you next time. Bye.